It's not about the fall. It's about the bounce back. Stay focused when you're tired. That's the danger zone for both a fighter and a lawyer, is they sometimes involve a lot of energy output and a lot of time. Do you want your lack of focus or fatigue to open you up to taking damage that knocks you out? Law school taught us how to think like a lawyer, and I teach people how to think like a legal athlete.
Becoming the best version of yourself gets a little flack for being overrated, but it takes a different kind of person to step into a vision of who they want to be. Today, you're going to meet somebody who very much walks the walk, someone that I've come to call a friend, someone I enjoy their content, their insights, their wisdom, and their background. Because the person you're about to meet today has, I don't want to say lived multiple careers, but feels like multiple lifetimes just based on how they have built out their life experience. Please welcome the legal athlete herself, Jess Sargus. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. That was such a great introduction. I appreciate that, Jonathan, very much. It's my pleasure to have become your good friend as well. We have such overlap in what we love and what we talk about. So this is a gift to me, our friendship and getting to talk to you today. So thank you.
Let's go. Let's go. Well, I think something I'm personally working on as a podcaster is just being more at home and comfortable. And you're definitely someone who brings that side out when it comes to talking about things that I love. So I think an optimal place to start would be, what does it mean to be a legal athlete?
That's a great question. So I'll give it cute terms first, and then I'll say what it means. At its most basic form, I tell people that law school taught us how to think like a lawyer, and I teach people how to think like a legal athlete. And what that means is using the same sort of mindset and mental performance principles that elite athletes use in order to not only perform at their best, but be able to maintain a high level of focus and fulfillment in pursuing something that they love that is really difficult and can be all consuming. And the athlete part isn't just the mindset, but in everything that I try to teach and coach on, I like to remind lawyers who tend to live up here in our brains that they are a whole person, and that being an athlete means taking care of your body, your mind, your emotions, and your spiritual, your purpose-driven life, so that it's when you are in alignment in all of those different levels that you're able to perform at your best, you're able to enjoy your life the most, and you're able to really be the captain of your own ship. You don't have to spend time because you feel awful. You don't have to spend time because your relationships are in crisis. You're caring for yourself as a whole person, and as a whole person who's relating to others. So that's, to me, that's what being a legal athlete means, is you are a whole person and you are honing yourself for high performance at every level.
So how do you define high performance?
For me, high performance is closing the gap between your potential and your performance. So figuring out what it is that is your goal, what is your potential, what is the bar that you want to reach or surpass, and then what are the steps that you can take to approach that bar, to get over that bar, and then to set yourself a new goal. So for me, that's really what high performance is we're not just gonna set a wish on a star and let it sit there. We're going to approach that star.
High performance for you isn't something that's necessarily new. You've been practicing it your whole life in multiple careers. You were a professional fighter for a while. You worked for Marvel Studios, Ivy League grad. I mean, where does all this ambition come from?
I mean, the easy answer would just say that I'm the youngest child, but that's not it. I've just always liked to test myself. I like to see how good things can get. And maybe it's a frailty, it served me well, but I have a competitive spirit. I used to tell folks that anyone who gets into competitive fighting has something that is a little bit wrong with them. For some people, they're working out, personal issues. Other people don't have a lot of other options. For me, it was just I was really competitive, and I discovered that I had not just a knack for it, but a love for it. So I wanted to see, I wanted to see, if I was being patronized in the gym or I was actually as good as I could be. So that's something that I've always wanted to test myself. It was how my big brother used to, I think, tire me out so that I wouldn't follow him around everywhere. But he would do things like, hey, Jess, let's see how fast you can sprint 10 times to the end of the yard and back. And I would do it because I wanted to see how fast I could sprint. And then he would tell me to do it again because it wasn't fast enough. That was the sort of thing that I thought was fun. So I've just carried that through, always wanting to see what I can do. And then I think also being used to a sort of rough and tumble life where I didn't expect to be perfect the first time or every time that I tried something, but it was the challenge of that approach that really drove me, that is fun for me. So I think that's something I've done since childhood, and at sometimes it's been healthier than others, the motivation and the all consuming devotion. But I feel like finally here, as I'm a couple of years away from 50, that I've gotten a little bit more on track with pursuing that in a healthy way.
What's interesting that I'm like uniquely curious about, and I'm sure you get this a bunch. I mean, first off, just to backtrack, sounds like you were kind of chasing market validation, like that objective lens, like how good can I be when I do this thing? Like,
Yeah.
to your point, am I just being hyper complimented and, a little bit of nepotism or whatever the thing is versus am I as good as I think I am? How good can I actually be? I resonate with that so much because I just felt like my whole life I couldn't do the things that I thought were possible, whether it was running a certain speed or getting into law school or whatever the thing is, whatever I've done is it's been this constant journey of am I as good as I think I am? Like, my parents told me I'm special, but what does it mean to be special? And so I just kind of chase that on a daily basis. And it sounds like, you have that, you self-describe yourself as a evangelist for high performance, but
Yeah.
you practice it also.
Yeah.
So you very much are an evangelist for high performance. So what I'm curious about your background in combat sports, how it's helped you as a person, professional, and as a lawyer, where are the overlaps there?
Oh man, the Venn diagram is very close to a perfect circle. There's less punching in the courtroom, one hopes, but in terms of the mental skill sets, being able to focus under pressure, being able to commit to doing things that are highly detailed and can be tedious, but you have to do them over and over at a high level so that you can perform them under pressure when it matters most, when things fall apart. And then, absorbing blows, being able to roll with the punches, literally and figuratively, so that you don't get derailed when things don't go to plan. I think all of those really key skill sets are important to be an excellent trial lawyer, be an excellent in-house counsel, as well as to be a really phenomenal fighter. One of my coaches one of their favorite refrains was, stay focused when you're tired. And, that's the danger zone for both a fighter and a lawyer, is they sometimes involve a lot of energy output and a lot of time. And in neither one, Do you want your lack of focus or fatigue to open you up to taking damage that knocks you out? Being able to do that, and we know now that the mental and neuroscience skills that you learn in one arena transform how you act in other arenas as well. They are absolutely transferable from a physical experience, an athletic experience, to a mostly intellectual experience, although there's energy output there, and certainly an amount of performance. So I think it helped me develop those skill sets, and to a certain extent, and this is where I think it deviates from the perfect Venn diagram circle, is that because it's such an unusual experience to be locked in the cage with someone else whose whole purpose there is to do you harm, standing up and giving an oral argument to a federal district judge doesn't seem as scary. So having a sense of perspective there is all I have to do is talk. Okay, that's great. It definitely gives me a sense of perspective there that, hey, this is awesome. I can handle this because at the end of the day, I know I'm walking out of here in one piece.
I mean, like, I did Muay Thai for a bit. I didn't cage fight, but I spent like a year of my life, also the military, Bronx SVU. Like, I definitely know what you mean in terms of seeing things not as much of a threat. I was with someone the other day who saw me handle a meeting, or maybe a couple weeks ago. They commended me on how I like went through the situation, and I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I've been through way worse stuff than if a meeting goes haywire. So I can imagine what happens in your mind when you have to get up and deal with a high pressure kind of situation. You zoom out and you're like, well, I've been through way worse. And this is nothing compared to that. Like, this is just me being prepared anyway, right? In both situations, I know you have a background. You were undefeated, if I'm not mistaken, in your career in cage fighting. So, I mean, I think that speaks to preparation, skill, market validation, if you will, and how you've decided to go about transferring those skills to this next chapter of your career. I mean, when you talk about focus, preparation, what are some of the tips, tools, tactics you offer professionals now when you get on stage or you're coaching? How do you help people get their mind on point to focus?
A lot of it is having their priorities identified. We can be pulled in a million different directions, but our brain, just as much as we'd like to think we can multitask in that way, we really can't. We can focus on one thing well at a time. And throughout the day, I think if you've got more than 3 priorities in a day, something's going to slip. So I really help with honing, okay, what is our goal here? And what is our goal in the next day, the next week, the next month, quarter, et cetera, so that we've got those goals at a telescope level, and then we bring it back to the microscope level. Is what do I need to do in this moment to accomplish this goal? With that, it comes back again to that athletic mindset, which is a present moment focus. When you use a lot of mental energy to think about, all right, what just happened? Analyzing what just happened. Oh God, that really went poorly. You're not thinking in that present moment, okay, what's important now for me to do? How do I move forward? And same thing when you're thinking about the parade of horribles that might happen. You're not focused on what can I do in this moment in order to move forward. So helping people focus not just on their goals, but focus temporally on, okay, what am I doing right now in this moment? How can I be moving things forward here? How can I control what I can control? Because we can't control the past, we can't control the future. We can control our actions that we take now, our behavior now. So for focus, it's clarity of purpose, and then we work on the discipline to try to keep noticing when our focus slips, noticing when our attention slips, and develop frameworks so that we can call it back through habits, through techniques, and through that practice of being able to call ourselves back to that present moment where we can be most effective.
It's so hard when you're in the thick of it to bring yourself back to that center. But audience knows at this point on the podcast, like, I've been listening for however long I've been listening. 10 Side the Inspired, thank you very much. The mental strength is all about how fast you can bring yourself back to center. And that adaptability, that ability to bring yourself into focus quickly. Resilience isn't about not breaking. It's about being able to bend and bounce and be malleable to a situation. Not necessarily a chameleon, but being able to respond in a way that allows you to bring grace, presence, and your truest self to that moment. And so I think one thing I would add to what you're sharing is practicing noticing those moments outside of where you see your attention shifting. Like, I've had some down moments in the last few weeks, and I'll notice my attention drifting where I'm like, all right, Mr. Mentally Tough Dude, like, are you going to bring yourself back to center in this moment? Or are you going to like negatively spiral out in let this situation get the better of you? Because I think something people mix up a lot is that they think just because, you're an Ivy League lawyer who's undefeated in cage matches, who's worked for Marvel, who's now an entrepreneur, who's gone through all these different renditions, that all of a sudden, like, the challenges stopped at some point and like they just didn't. So how have you brought yourself back to center in your world as you continue, as you write your book, as physically as you write this book, and metaphorically as you write your life's work? How are you bringing yourself back to center?
The one word answer is compassion. The real answer too is practice. I've had to be resilient a lot of different times in my life, starting from when I was very young. When I was 13, my mom had a nearly fatal accident, really horrific traumatic brain injury when a horse kicked her in the head. At that time, my brother and my sister were much older than me, 7 and 9 years older. So I was the only child in the home. And not only dealing with my mom, in the ICU, and my dad being in crisis, but then the years of recovery afterward, where as her brain was recovering, and she's amazing. I saw her doing the work, doing the practice to retrain her brain to really live as an example of neuroplasticity, about how much capacity our brains have to relearn and retrain. That's one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated and devoted to neuroscience now, because I saw it. I saw it in real life through force of will and determination and really joy. She was so joyful to still be alive and with her family. And I was feeling the same way, that going through something like that and realizing that even when it feels like your entire world and your entire safety system has been ripped from you as a child, that there is a way back, and it's through the love of your family and your friends, and through determination and putting in the work, even on the days when it seems overwhelming and seems impossible. That was a huge part of my original resilience, is once you've gone through something like that with your family, you don't sweat the small stuff, because everything else is the small stuff. And maybe I had just genetically from my parents. My mom, obviously, she's tough, and my dad, he's a clinical psychologist. He's just so kind and aware. And I don't know where this need to prove myself and to come back really came from. It's probably from them, but it's been honed in ways I couldn't expect. Like, I've ridden horses since before I could walk. Literally, I was 3 days old. My mom put me on a horse in front of her and took off for a ride. And when you are dealing with, a 1,200-pound animal as a human, and they are a prey animal, so if they get freaked out, that's 1,200 pounds that are going in whatever random direction. You have to learn to maintain your cool. Even when you might be outpowered, you have to outsmart, have to maintain calmness, because horses can tell if you're freaked out. They're not going to listen to you. If you're panicking too, they're going to be, oh, yes, we should all run now. So training in that way, training in sports, training for achievement and sometimes validation, but achievement in school, all of those things. Not everything was perfect, but I've been knocked down, and sometimes I have intentionally taken a step back. Like I got that job at Marvel Studios when I was a senior mass torts attorney, doing product liability cases, nationwide, and leading a team to get that Marvel Studios job. I took a huge hit in salary. I took a huge hit in seniority. I started as just regular counsel to learn the business of entertainment from the ground up, but it was something that I really wanted to do, that I was passionate about doing, and it was an amazing opportunity. So I took that step back because ultimately it was still on that through line of growth for me, of learning and challenging myself in a new way. So there's been other personal experiences where I've had to deal with things. I've gone through divorces, and you just learn that it's not about the fall. It's about the bounce back, just like you said. I forget where I learned it, but I discovered that one of the key parameters that NASA evaluates potential astronauts with isn't necessarily test scores or physical training, it's failure recovery. Because they know, even though they're NASA, they're the smartest, they're literally rocket scientists, they know things are going to go wrong. And they need someone up there that knows how to recover from failure in the best possible way. And so that's how I've tried to navigate my life. Again, there have been a lot of highs, and for me, each day I find joy, and even hard days I find joy and contentment in. And that's where I think, to circle back, that's where the compassion comes, because I know not every day is going to be a stellar day. There are some days they're just going to be hard. Some days there's going to be things that hit the fan. And I just have compassion with that a bounce back doesn't necessarily mean an immediate bounce back. If you're fighting in the cage, it should be as immediate as possible. But in life, you can give yourself some grace and some compassion to feel what you're going through, acknowledge it, and then you can drop it. You can do something useful with it. But if you don't give yourself that time to feel it, acknowledge it, get curious about it, not as a forever mark on your life story, but as a puzzle and as something to help you learn. I think having that compassion and that curiosity allows you to get that bounce back. And the more you do it, I think the faster you're able to do that, the more reliably you're able to do that, because you've shown yourself you can do it in the past. So you get that self-efficacy, like you've trained your mid-cingulate cortex that you can do hard things, right? That mental grip muscle. So every time you do it and you show yourself the compassion that you need to get through it in the time that you need, and ultimately you tell yourself, okay, that's enough. We figured it out. Now we're in rumination. Now it's no longer useful. You can move forward at that point after having exercised that, because we're all human. It doesn't mean you don't feel. Every fighter that I know is afraid before they get in that cage. They do it anyway. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel. It just means that you're able to operate through that with it as a passenger, not as fear in the driver's seat.
Wow, I love that. A passenger to the feeling. I mean, that goes to what you were saying in terms of how you can process those emotions, how you could sit with that emotion, get curious with that emotion. I think, actionably speaking, people hear those things, but they don't necessarily know what it means. It's a little bit too high level, I think. And I'm speaking as someone who had to learn how to do that over time and still practice it, right? Like, even when I was saying earlier, like, oh, this workout didn't go as well, or and now I'm like, is it even possible for me to run a sub 3 hour marathon because this one like workout didn't go well, or like this one negative review speaking to thousands of people, like, is that indicative of my entire skill set, or this one bad moment in the workday, is this indicative of like my performance as a whole? And then what you were saying earlier, being able to roll with the punches and take blows while also be, and I always think about that, like, cage fighters or any winner or any basketball team or any in any sport, like a perfect game or having your opponent score 0 points on the scoreboard, very unrealistic. Like, it's inevitable that the opposition is going to get some points on the board. It's not, the point is to win. It's not to, and to understand, it's not to keep the other side scoreless or not take any hits, right? I mean, when you were talking before about getting curious about those feelings and how your mind may drift in those moments, that is a skill and an attribute that can be trained. But the question is, where do people start? And I think you offered some practical questions, with like, what is this feeling of insecurity? Like, why am I feeling this feeling of insecurity? What is it? Is it that I was hurt about something when I was younger and this is a trigger point? Is it that I have this particular action item that I'm feeling uncertain about? People don't feel comfortable navigating uncertainty. How would you offer some guidance in navigating uncertainty?
On the professional side, there's so much that goes into it, and it's hard to say you can snap your fingers and immediately you're going to be good at making decisions under pressure. There's a lot of foundational things that start to make you good at making decisions and taking action under pressure. A big part of that is self-confidence. And I don't mean this in the, puff out your chest kind of way. I mean in having learned that you can rely on yourself in moments of crisis by doing it, by having gone through hard things and survived, by keeping your promises to yourself. I mean, that's a huge one. When you say, all right, I'm going to get up every morning at 6 a.m. and I'm going to walk out that door and get in a mile walk, no matter what. Every time that you don't do that, you don't keep that promise to yourself, you're eroding that confidence, that self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle things, that you can count on yourself when things get hard. And so one of the foundational things that I try to help people practice is keeping their promises to themselves. It doesn't have to be big things, but when you tell yourself, all right, I am going to eat a vegetable every day. Doing that, it seems odd, but it helps you to develop the belief in yourself that, hey, I am my own best friend. I can count on myself under pressure. So having that belief, that self-efficacy, and you can build it in other ways too. I like to talk about stress inoculation. Those are, periodized small stressors that you put yourself through that are challenging situations, and you learn to move beyond them. Things like, it can be a sauna session, it can be a high intensity interval training, it can be learning a new language, just doing something that you're not great at or that is somewhat difficult. But when you do that in a periodized way and then allow yourself to recover after, each time you are training yourself that you can rely on you, that you can get yourself through. That foundation is key for what I think the the question you asked about is how do you get better at making decisions under pressure? For me, that's practicing being action oriented. There's a researcher, Steve Magnus. He's studied Olympic athletes. I know you know him too. Olympic athletes, high level athletes for almost 20 years now. And he discovered that there is this one factor that differentiates the truly elite, the champions of the champions, from other really world class athletes. And it wasn't grit, it wasn't determination. They've all got that at that level. It was action orientation. And that's the a willingness to take action even under imperfect conditions. And for me, that's what we as professionals also need to do when we're trying to make decisions under high pressure situations is we have to be okay with that decision not being perfect or not having perfect information to make it. But we can always figure things out from the next step forward. When you don't take that next step forward, that's when things start to go downhill fast. That's when things start to hit the fan and recovery isn't possible because you're not moving forward. You're frozen. You're in reaction mode. You're not in action mode, taking control, exercising autonomy, exercising the best decision making that you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be moving forward, and you can zig and zag and figure it on the way. But in order to be action oriented, what all these athletes have done is they've put in the work to have that trust in themselves that they can take an imperfect step and right themselves afterwards. So that's why I talk about foundation of self-trust and stress inoculation and training that grit muscle, because that's really where it comes from, is believing in yourself, believing that you can handle situations, that gives you the confidence in order to take that action even when you don't know for sure it's going to be successful.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Inspired. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and I have a quick favor to ask you. If you're getting any value out of this content, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. You help us reach more people, and you can also stay up to date with all the latest content coming your way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you in the episode. It's so funny because I've gone back and forth with Steve coming on the pod. One day it will happen. It's on me that it didn't. Long story long, but it will happen. And going through his work, he talks about, he's written a few books on it. To your point, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And he talks about how in one of the chapters in his book, Do Hard Things, I read Win the Inside Game and I read Do Hard Things. And in one of the chapters, he talks about the wrong lessons that we took from the military. And everyone assumes that the boot camp style of training that we get from the military is a good thing that breeds toughness and the like. When in reality, what we should have done is focus on helping people understand that at the core, the foundation, it's the education of doing the hard thing that helps build the competence to go and endure the hard things. So this way, when stress comes, to your point, stress inoculation training, anything of the kind, people know how to navigate that hardship productively. So they're not just in a vacuum doing something difficult for the sake of doing something difficult, because that's just grind versus an actual functional way to manage stress competently. And it prevents us from raising our cortisol. It prevents us from dealing with hard situations and making them worse than they need to be. They're already hard enough. Like, we don't need to make them any harder. We tell ourselves the wrong story, sending ourselves into spirals instead of focusing on how we can make the most of the situation and treat situations as challenges instead of threats. And, we were talking about uncertainty and making tough decisions under pressure. One of the things that keeps coming top of mind is how AI is going to impact the legal industry. And I've had this conversation with a few different lawyers. I'm curious your take. I want to go down this rabbit hole for a few minutes. How do you see AI impacting the legal industry? And then we'll go from there.
I am pro AI, and I'll use a line that everyone's saying now. It's not that AI is going to take our lawyer jobs, but lawyers who use AI well are going to surpass the lawyers who don't know how to use AI. It's an incredibly powerful tool. I think, one of our professional responsibilities is to learn tools to advance our skills, to help our clients to keep up with technology. And if we can use AI in certain ways, in drafting certain things or assisting in research, always checking the research. We're still checking the research. But if we can do that so that if you bill by the hour, you're not billing your client for time that could have been automated with just having a smart human checking at the end. I think that's going to help. Being able to also digest and analyze vast quantities of information. Sometimes, like in a mass torts litigation, you might have millions, literally millions of documents to go through, and being able to have AI assist you in being able to determine what are the documents that are actually useful. And I say this now as having switched to the plaintiff side, but sometimes it was a strategy for defense attorneys to just give you way too many documents so that what you really wanted to see was in there, but it's a million pages in, so good luck. This takes that kind of tactic off the table. So I think there's all kinds of ways that AI can help us do our jobs faster and better and get to the heart of the matter. What I do want to caution, I think, about AI is that, as all the science fiction movies remind us and try to fantasize about, but AI doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have compassion. I heard someone discuss it like it exhibits the triad of sociopathy. You don't ever want AI in control of the world's war systems. We saw that in War Games movie, right? Because it will solve the problem in a way that doesn't take into account humanity or emotions in the way that are vital to us as humans. So in that essence, because justice, I don't think, can be devoid of humanity if we want it to be real justice, we're always going to need lawyers to exercise that in addition to getting the intellectual tools, the analytical tools, the speed-based tools that we get from AI. But I have no concern that AI could ever do the same job as a skilled trial attorney, or even an attorney who's transactional, because at some point you need to take into consideration human factors, and AI just isn't situated, isn't capable of doing that at this yet. And I am not a data scientist. Who knows? Perhaps emotion can become an algorithm. I don't know. But at this point, and for the near future, I know that it's not.
So I'm glad you talked about it in the way that you did, because maybe until a few weeks ago, I probably thought 95% of the same as you. And recently, what I'm wrestling with is a reality in which I'm being naive about it, not because it's not possible for, the human element is super important. You and I talk about it all the time. And I've been reading this book, Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, and he pretty much undercuts a lot of what you and I think on this topic, where it is very possible for not just a lawyer, but because this is where our proficiency and credentials are, we'll double click on it. And I'm trying to be responsible when I have this conversation, right? Not just agreeable, where he makes the argument that language models or AI is actually more primed to have certain conversations compared to humans, because where people are not emotionally intelligent. You talked about how you show yourself compassion in certain moments. AI may have that ability to show compassion in a moment where a human needs it, whereas another human may not. That lack of emotional intelligence can cost a relationship, not just with another human, but sending someone down the AI rabbit hole. I mean, we see it now, right? Where we have relationships with, where humans are developing relationships with AI. And I'm not trying to like bring the apocalyptic side of things to light. That's really not what it is. I really just see that we're at this inflection point in this space where if we're not training these tools, these things that you're talking about, emotional intelligence, self-control, emotional awareness, self-awareness, how to bring ourselves back to focus, how to leverage AI in a way that helps us expand our thinking but also complements our skill sets and enhances our ability to perform rather than replacing us or outsourcing in a way that allows us to do the work for ourselves. Like, I am on this vigilant path right now to make sure I don't fall into that category of AI is going to do the work for me. And it's very easy to slip into that. I don't really care how strong mentally anyone is. Like, certain things are just easier if you can rationalize getting around doing certain tasks so you can focus on the thing in front of you and stuff. So like I'm so focused on this lawyer well-being movement because I believe that the industry is not only suffering but can be not this is going to sound dramatic and I haven't even said this out loud, but almost like AI can be a Trojan horse in a way to overtake the profession because I was listening to someone who I do and don't always agree with, Scott Galloway, about how he's speaking to PE executives who are being tasked with cutting $30 to $50 million worth of spending on their legal bills through AI and drafting their own contracts, stuff like that. And they're estimating to save even more. That's scary to me in many ways, not because of money that's going outside of the legal industry. It's more so what's going to happen to those people and how they bounce back from a setback, not the corporate side of things, right? So I'm kind of going on this like negative thought loop and it's not really intentional. It's kind of different from the brand of Inside the Inspired, but like I need to have this conversation with someone I know that's competent enough to have it. So I'm having it with you. And so that's kind of my thought on it at a high level.
Well, I think you ranged into something that is really important. And also I think it is again shared between elite athletes and professionals, legal professionals, is that it's dangerous to identify yourself wholly as your profession. I think that, in instances where your whole self-worth is tied up in being this thing, being let's say, a corporate lawyer who drafts contracts for a big corporation, or being a professional athlete, because we know at some point that's going to end. There is a physical limitation that eventually every professional athlete hits. And the spirals that I've seen when they don't know who they are without active competition in a sport is stunning and can be incredibly devastating. And I think it's the same thing when any person identifies themselves as I am a lawyer, not I am a man who is doing legal work and has a family and loves to do marathons, and all of these ways that wellness and a focus on that, a focus on being a whole human, can help to insulate you from a hit in one of these big areas, in your professional life. It goes the other way too. Sometimes bad things happen in our personal life, and the solidity and the validation that we get from being a great professional can help insulate us a little bit and help us get through things. Same thing with, I think, our personal life, our health. being a community citizen, not just an island of one. I think it helps us to get through situations like, am I redundant now? Maybe in a particular aspect, maybe a corporation has made that decision, but you're not redundant as a human. You're unique and valuable simply by existing. And I think the more that we are able to help people to realize that and really teach themselves that they have value outside of their product, that we can insulate people from changes in the industry that require some resilience, that require maybe changing an entirely way that they operate, or the profession in which they operate. But for me, that's why wellness is so vital, is that it reminds us that we are not just one thing. And if that something happens to that one thing, we're adrift, we're moralists. We want to be great at that thing, but we want to learn to be great at living too.
I love the bounce back in terms of and the holistic perspective that you take on it, because someone may be saying, well, Jess, that's great, but how do I pay my bills? And I think part of it is that, you have to take the ownership of the responsibility, in the sense that first you become aware that there's a threat, not just a challenge, or perceive that potential threat as a challenge, to say, okay, how am I going to level up my practice, build that value in, show that I'm capable of delivering even more value than maybe an AI bot or anything along those lines, but taking responsibility for where you're at today and becoming hyper aware of the situation as it can unfold in the landscape, the legal landscape, or whatever field you're in. AI is going to impact every single industry, but like having the emotional control not to spiral out and say, well, it's this robot's fault that I don't have a job. It still is incumbent upon you to prepare for the worst. And like Jess and I can't necessarily solve that particular problem on this podcast, but we can open up the conversation. That's largely what I want to do right now, is just open up that conversation, because it's definitely top of mind. I'm a futurist. I'm an AI optimist. Like, I'm very much on board with like the non-apocalyptic version of these things, but there's very much a reality that we have to be prepared for as professionals and people, that certain things are outside of our control, and we could have all the resilience in the world, but we still have to be rational. And so how do we prepare ourselves in a practical way to handle whatever shift in the professional landscape may transpire? How are we going to be prepared to handle that adversity? And I think Jess did a great job of breaking down, like, you're more than your just occupational identity. And it's important to tap into those other aspects of who you are as a person, because that's what's going to serve you in those moments of uncertainty, as we talked about before. Jess, I know you're working on this incredible book with the Fierce Model Framework. Let's touch on that before we wrap this up. What can people expect with the book? When's it launching? Tell us everything.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. The book is called Fierce Agency, and it is a guide to unapologetic self-leadership and high performance. Through the book, I will give a number of interviews with some psychological and professional experts, people who have lived the concepts that I'm talking about. But the core of the book are the 5 pillars of fierce agency. And to me, what that means is focusing on your ability to not just be the main character in your life, but to be the author of it. Not following a script that you were handed by someone else, but writing your own based on what actually matters most to you, what you find to be fulfilling as a human, what you picture as your ideal self, your ideal world. One of the greatest regrets the research is showing that people have at the end of their life, there can be a number, but the number one is the ways that they didn't live up to their ideal hopes for themselves. The actions not taken, not the things that they did. And so for me, the 5 pillars of fierce agency are the mental and mental performance aspects that I grabbed from athletics. I know that elite athletes share this from sports psychology, from performance psychology, that when you practice these five pillars, that they are to me the firmest foundation for being able to lead yourself with confidence towards joy as the CEO of your life. And I'll just very briefly, because I'll explain them more at nauseum, anyone who will listen. The five pillars are: one, growth mindset. That's the basis for everything. That's how you improve. That's how you develop this resilience. Two, we talked about action orientation, being willing to take a movement forward, even with imperfect information or imperfect confidence that it's going to result in success. Present moment focus. Again, what can I do here and then now to move myself forward, to care for myself? Process over outcome. Again, when you're fixated on a particular outcome and that doesn't happen, it's so much easier to get derailed, to get stuck in a freeze, rather than if you're about process, you're able to see obstacles with curiosity and start to overcome them. I think one of the analogies that I use for process over outcome is that the professional fighters that I knew, that I trained with, who were the best, they weren't the ones who were fixated on, I'm going to win this fight. I'm going to win this fight. I'm going to win this belt. It was the people who are focused on, I'm going to be the best fighter I can be. I'm going to be the best fighter in that cage. And then the win takes care of itself. So when we can focus on the process and find joy in that process, then the outcome, even one that we are working towards very diligently and very, very focusedly, isn't the end all be all for how fulfilled we feel, how much success we've achieved, because we focus on that process. And then ultimately, my fifth pillar is that mission alignment. Is what is your big goal? And you can break this down in different levels of the telescope. Your mission for me is, what do you want people to say about you in their eulogy? And it's not going to be like, wow, Jess really billed a lot of hours. You want them to talk about, wow, she helped people. She grew a family. She planted 50 trees. What do you want people to tell other people about you? And that's often not necessarily what you've done, but how you've made them feel. And then there's your vision: is what are the specific goals, the specific outcomes that you want to achieve? That helps guide more of your day to day, more of your week to week and month to month. And then ultimately, and this goes to a really key component of happiness. It's one that Arthur Brooks talks about that I think is really critical, is what are your principles? What are the elements that you want to embody and live, that not only help you advance towards your goals, but are making you the person that is that perfect Venn diagram of your ideal self? What do I want to embody? What principles do I want to live that keep me in alignment? Because that's where happiness comes from. That's where purpose comes from. That's where fulfillment and success in the process comes, when it is the alignment with those principles that you identify that are uniquely yours. So that's what the book will be about. That's the core of it. There'll be extra interviews with folks who've lived it, science and neuroscience, because I can't help myself. But it's a guide of, hey, here are five things. You practice these, you are going to be able to lead yourself like a badass.
I love it. I'm super excited for it. I want an autographed copy once it's done.
Oh, it's yours.
And I'm super grateful for the time today. Is a question that I pose to all my guests that I'm not going to pose to you. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now were to fly in and offer you some advice, what do you think she would say to you?
That's such a great question. It's hard to project out forward, because I feel like she would say something that I try to tell myself now still, which is just keep going. Keep going. Everything works out in perfect timing. I think that our brain's power to imagine a future vividly is largely untapped. I've gotten more and more into that, but the more that I embrace that, not only does everything else fall in place because my focus and my mission and my boundaries all become very clear and simplified. But I think that when you can vividly step into the life that you imagine, and I imagine my life 10 years from now as the one that I'm taking baby steps toward every day to advance toward. And so I think my 10-year in advance self would say, just keep going. Keep going. You've got it will work out, sometimes in ways you don't anticipate, because it certainly has been a lot of zig and zags to get where I am now, ways no one could have anticipated. But the through line is growth, and the through line is that things happen at the right times if you maintain that focus and you put out that energy that is aligned with where you really want to go. So just keep going.
I love it. Thank you so much. Please let the audience know where they can keep up with your journey.
Sure. You can always find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Jess Sargus. I answer my DMs. That's me, not an AI bot, I promise you. And you can also reach me directly by email at jess@thelegalathlete.com. You can check out my website, thelegalathlete.com. And every week I drop my own podcast, The Legal Athlete Podcast, and it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
I love it. Thank you so much. If you got any value out of this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to Inside the Inspired. Once again, this was Jess Sargus. I'm Jonathan Cohen, and I'll see you on the next one.